You're the prosecutor. You're the attorney general. What is going on here? Is this America?
So to your point, that's where everyone, I think, is starting to understand this election is not 2016 or 2020, because that Supreme Court decision just a few months ago basically said to the former president, you will be immune from anything you do in office. Now, this is a guy who has said he'll be a dictator on day one. Yeah. Has said he would weaponize the Department of Justice, take away the independence of the Department of Justice, and put his loyalist in.
She just made a point. Kamala said that if Donald is elected, he's going to choose another 2 Supreme Court justices. You already got 6-3, 5-4. You already have the 6-3, I think. So you got 6 conservatives. Then it's going to be 8 conservatives. Holy freaking crap. If they're conservative with the Bill of Rights, then how come we don't get a grand jury indictment? How come the 7th Amendment and the 3rd Amendment have not been upheld? If they're conservatives, then what the Constitution says, it says what it means, and it means what it says.
Somebody who has said, literally, he would use this word, he uses this word. He would terminate the Constitution of the United States. You know what the Constitution of the United States does? That's the 4th Amendment against unreasonable search and seizure. That's the 5th Amendment, which is your right to remain silent. That's the 6th Amendment, your right to an attorney. And he's going to terminate the Constitution?
That's pretty good. It seems like Kamala Harris has actually read the United States Constitution. How many fucking pieces of shit who get all the goddamn benefits of this country hasn't even read the first fucking sentence? A bunch of stupid ass motherfuckers. The Manipulated Man. It makes me think of The Manipulated Man by what's her name? Esther Viller. The Manipulated Man. I'm gonna read Man's Rights. This is from Ayn Rand, from Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, interspersed with Kamala Harris. If one wishes to advocate a free society that is capitalism, one must realize that its indispensable foundation is the principle of individual rights. If one wishes to uphold individual rights, one must realize that capitalism is the only system that can uphold and protect them. And if one wishes to gauge the relationship of freedom to the goals of today's intellectuals, one may gauge it by the fact that the concept of individual rights is evaded, distorted, perverted, and seldom discussed, most conspicuously seldom by the so-called conservatives. Rights are a moral concept. Rights, the concept that provides a logical transition from the principles guiding an individual's actions to the principles guiding his relationship with others, the concept that preserves and protects individual morality in a social context, the link between the moral code of a man and the legal code of a society, between ethics and politics. Individual rights are the means of subordinating society to moral law. Every political system is based on some code of ethics. The dominant ethics of mankind's history were variants of the altruist collectivist doctrine which subordinated the individual to some higher authority, either mystical or social. Peace, land, and bread. Peace, land, and bread. Consequently, most political systems were variants of the same status tyranny, different only in degree, not in basic principle, limited only by the accidents of tradition of chaos, of bloody strife, and periodic collapse. Under all such systems, morality was a code applicable to the individual, but not to society. Society was placed outside the moral law as its embodiment or source or exclusive interpreter, and the inculcation of self-sacrificial devotion to social duty was regarded as the main purpose of ethics in man's earthly existence. Since there is no such entity as society, since society is only a number of individual men, this meant in practice that the rulers of society were exempt from moral law, subject only to traditional rituals. They held total power and exacted blind obedience on the implicit principle of the good is that which is good for society or for the tribe, the race, the nation, and the ruler's edicts are its voices on earth. Even with an American dictatorship, they can't break the rights of the states. They can't break the rights of the 2 branches, and they cannot break the rights of the individuals codified in the Bill of Rights, but really from the preamble to Amendment 27. The entire document has got rights and freedoms in it. All the body of the Constitution has habeas corpus, right to trial by jury. The preamble has the right to establish justice, the right to vote, the right to be free from poll taxes. That's your other amendments. But if we can stick with the Bill of Rights, the 10 rights, the 10 Bill of Rights by James Madison. James Madison got the Constitution passed without the Bill of Rights. But Patrick Henry made such a stink that we got him back. Since there is no entity without the Bill of Rights, the Constitution isn't worth a goddamn. What the fuck was so goddamn revolutionary about not the Constitution, the Revolution? What was so revolutionary about the Revolution without the Bill of Rights? Oh, we get to elect our goddamn oppressors? Do we get anything out of the deal? You get a right to speak and petition. How about that? Since there is no such entity as society, since society is only a number of individual men, this meant in practice that the rulers of society were exempt from moral law, subject only to traditional rituals, that they held total power and exacted blind obedience on the implicit principle. The good is that which is good for society, or for the tribe, the race, the nation, and the ruler's edicts are its voice on earth. I know I repeated it, but it's worth repeating. This was true of all status systems, under all variants of the altruist collectivist ethics, mystical or social. The divine right of kings summarizes the political theory of the first, vox populi, vox dei, of the second, as witness the theocracy of Egypt with the pharaoh as an embodied god, the unlimited majority rule or democracy of Athens, the welfare state run by the emperors of Rome, the Inquisition of the late Middle Ages, the absolute monarchy of France, the welfare state of Bismarck's Prussia, the gas chambers of Nazi Germany, the slaughterhouse of the Soviet Union. All these political systems were expressions of the altruist collectivist ethics, and their common characteristic is the fact that society stood above the moral law as an omnipotent sovereign whim worshiper. Thus, politically, all these systems were variants of an amoral society. The most profoundly revolutionary achievement of the United States of America was the subordination of society to moral law. The principle of man's individual rights represented the extension of morality into the social system as a limitation on the power of the state as man's protection against the brute force of the collective. As a subordination of might to right, the United States was the first moral society in history. All previous systems have regarded man as a sacrificial means to the ends of others and society as an end in itself. The United States regarded man as an end in himself and society as a means to the peaceful, orderly, voluntarily coexistence of individuals. All previous systems had held that man's life belongs to society, that society can dispose of him in any way it pleases, and that any freedom he enjoys is only by favor, by the permission of society, which may be revoked at any time. The United States held that man's life is his by right, which means by moral principle and by his nature, that a right is the property of an individual, that society as such has no rights, and that the only moral purpose of a government is the protection of individual rights. A right is a moral principle defining and sanctioning a man's freedom of action in a social context.
Yeah. Let me ask you this.
Now, don't ask Howard,
Wins,
you
God
fucking
forbid.
pervert.
Would you feel safe in this
Why
country?
would you go talking to that damn
Would you
pervert?
stay in this country?
Howard, I'm doing everything I can to make
Would you
sure
stay in
get
this
that
country? Everybody always
What if he
says that.
does?
If I don't get
How
my
come
way
he
with the
said
election,
he's
I'm going to
saying,
move
"No, I'm
out.
just
And they
gonna do
never
whatever the
fucking
hell I
do.
want. This time I know what I need to do.
You know what?
You don't
All
know,
of those
Howard.
former officials from national security, the over 200 Republicans who worked with both Presidents Bush, Mitt Romney, John McCain, who are endorsing me, the former Vice President Dick Cheney, who was voting for me along with his daughter Liz.
You're
Cheney.
bragging about a war
We
criminal.
are building a coalition of people that are Republicans.
They are right-wing motherfuckers.
independents,
She is so
Democrats,
conservative.
Libertarians, all stripes of
And you're going to
Americans
carry
who are
on with the
coming together
genocide
to
of
say,
Gaza,
you know
right?
what?
You're
This
going to
election
let
is
them
about
bomb
country
Lebanon
before
and keep on
party.
giving them billions
This
of
is
fucking
about
dollars.
saying, do
We
we
could have
want a
solved
president
homelessness
that's
for a
abide by the
fraction
oath
of the cost
to
of
support
the
and
genocide in
defend the Constitution
Gaza.
of the United States
The
for someone
priorities
who
of
is
America
full-time engaged
is to
in
slaughter the
flying
innocent
from
children in
Vladimir
Gaza,
Putin
to
of
slaughter the
Russia
innocent
and
children in
sending
the West Bank,
COVID
to
testing
slaughter the
kits over
children
to
in
him while
Lebanon.
Americans are
Do you
dying
think they
of
give a
COVID.
damn about the
It's
poor
remarkable.
or the
By way, you have
homeless
said
in this
something I've been
country?
screaming about for years. here.
I know how the
I
homeless
believe
people
the
are
United
treated
States
in
does,
America.
but I believe
Nobody
you can
gives a
tell
shit. The
society
wealthiest country
by
in the
its
fucking
post
world
office.
walks right
You go
past their
overseas,
homeless.
you
And
can't
they're
get a
annoyed
letter.
and bothered. Oh, give you money,
The
give
post
you
office here
change.
in the United States is so
I'm gonna let you
fantastic.
stay on the street and
We
die.
take
Let you
things
stay on
for
the street and
granted.
starve to
Right
death.
now, we're taking for granted how good things are.
You're right.
We really are. And you have said, and I was thinking back to when Trump was
Oh, God. A right is a moral principle. There is only one fundamental right. All the others are its consequences or corollaries. A man's right to his own life. Life is a process of self-sustaining and self-generated action. The right to life means the right to engage in self-sustaining and self-generated action, which means the freedom to take all the actions required by the nature of a rational being for the support, the furtherance, the fulfillment, and the enjoyment of his own life. Such is the meaning of the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The concept of a right pertains only to action, specifically to freedom of action. It means freedom from physical compulsion, coercion, or interference by other men. Thus, for every individual, a right is the moral sanction of a positive, of his freedom to act on his own judgment, for his own goals, by his own voluntary, uncoerced choice. As to his neighbors, his rights impose no obligations on them except of a negative kind, to abstain from violating his rights. The right to life is the source of all rights, and the right to property is their only implementation. Without property rights, no other rights are possible, since man has to sustain his life by his own effort. The man who has no right to the product of his effort has no means to sustain his life. The man who produces while others dispose of his product is a slave. Bear in mind that the right to property is a right of action. Like all the others, it is not the right to an object, but to the action and the consequences of producing or earning that object. It is not a guarantee that a man will earn any property, but only a guarantee that he will own it if he earns it. It is the right to gain, to keep, to use, and to dispose of material values. The concept of individual rights is so new in human history that most men have not grasped it fully to this day. And in accordance with the two theories of ethics, the mystical or the social, some men assert that rights are a gift of God, others that rights are a gift of society, but in fact the source of rights is man's nature. The Declaration of Independence stated that men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Whether one believes that man is a product of a Creator or of nature, the issue of man's origin does not alter the fact that he is an entity of a specific kind, a rational being, that he cannot function successfully under coercion, and that rights are a necessary condition of his particular mode of survival. The source of man's rights is not divine law or congressional law, but the law of identity. A is A, and man is man. Rights are conditions of existence required by man's nature for his proper survival. If man is to live on earth, it is right for him to use his mind. It is right to act on his own free judgment. It is right to work for his values and to keep the product of his work. If life on earth is his purpose, he has a right to live as a rational being. Nature forbids him the irrational.
president. Remember who he
Yeah,
appointed
blah,
to
blah,
be
blah.
in charge of
Let's
the
hear
post
what
office
she's
and
got to
remember the
say, you
chaos at the post
asshole.
office?
Yes.
I couldn't get a letter.
Yes.
That's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
enough.
don't know. I don't know. I don't get it.
But here's the thing. Let's not throw up our hands. Let's roll up our sleeves. Because this is
Shouldn't have to.
But this is our country. And you know what? If you love our country, we got to fight for our country. We can't take our country for granted. I love our country. I love the American people. And what I see when I'm traveling all over our country is that people are coming together of all different backgrounds based on a common belief that if you love something, you got to fight for it. And that's this moment. That's this moment. And we can have our disagreements, but there's some foundational stuff that we got to agree on.
Yeah, like right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you're going to finance a genocide, you don't even believe in life, let alone liberty or the pursuit of happiness. To violate man's rights means to compel him to act against his own judgment or to expropriate his values. Basically, there is only one way to do it, by the use of physical force. There are two potential violators of man's rights, the criminals and the government. The great achievement of the United States was to draw a distinction between these two by forbidding to the second the legalized version of the activities of the first. The Declaration of Independence laid down the principle that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. This provided the only valid justification of a government and defined its only proper purpose, to protect man's rights by protecting him from physical violence. Thus, the government's function was changed from the role of ruler to the role of servant. The government was set to protect man from criminals, and the Constitution was written to protect man from the government. The Bill of Rights was not directed against private citizens, but against the government as an explicit declaration that individual rights supersede any public or social power. The result was the pattern of a civilized society which, for the brief span of some 150 years, America came close to achieving. A civilized society is one in which physical force is banned from human relationships, in which the government, acting as a policeman, may use force only in retaliation and only against those who initiate its use. This was the essential meaning and intent of America's political philosophy, the philosophy implicit in the principle of individual rights, but it was not formulated explicitly, nor fully accepted, nor consistently practiced. America's inner contradiction was the altruist collectivist ethics. Altruism is incompatible with freedom, with capitalism, and with individual rights. One cannot combine the pursuit of happiness with the moral status of a sacrificial animal. It was a concept of individual rights that had given birth to a free society. It was the destruction of individual rights that the destruction of freedom had to begin. A collectivist tyranny dare not enslave a country by an outright confiscation of its values, material or moral. It has to be done by a process of internal corruption. Just as in the material realm, the plundering of a country's wealth is accomplished by inflating the currency, so today one may witness the process of inflation being applied to the realm of rights. The process entails such a growth of newly promulgated rights that people do not notice the fact that the meaning of the concept is being reversed. Just as bad money drives out good money, so these printing press rights negate authentic rights. Consider the curious fact that never has there been such a proliferation all over the world of two contradictory phenomena, of alleged new rights and of slave labor camps. The gimmick was the switch of the concept of rights from the political to the economic realm. The Democratic Party platform of 1960 summarizes the switch boldly and explicitly. It declares that a Democratic administration will reaffirm the Economic Bill of Rights, which Franklin Roosevelt wrote in our national conscience 16 years ago. Bear in mind the meaning of the concept of rights when you read the list which the platform offers. 1. The right to a useful and remunerative job in the industries or shops or farms or mines of the nation. The right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation. The right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living. The right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home and abroad. The right of every family to a decent home, the right of adequate medical care, and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. The right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accidents, and unemployment. The right to a good education. I like all those rights. That adds to my bushel of freedoms. A single question added to each of the above 8 clauses that would make the issue clear. At whose expense? Jobs, food, clothing, recreation, homes, medical care, education do not grow in nature. These are man-made values, goods and services produced by men. Who is to provide them? If some men are entitled by right to the products of the work of others, it means that those others are deprived of rights and condemned to slave labor. Any alleged right of one man which necessitates the violation of the rights of another is not and cannot be a right. I would say the right to form a contract to get a job, the right to start a business, the right to stop fraud in business and to stop monopolies. That's Milton Friedman. So to stop monopolies, that's a good right. No man can have a right to impose an unchosen obligation, an unrewarded duty, or an involuntary servitude on another man. There can be no such thing as the right to enslave. A right does not include the material implementation of that right by other men. It includes only the freedom to earn the implementation. Man, there's a lot here. Of that right by other men, it includes only the freedom to earn that implementation by one's own effort. How much time have I got?
Rule of law.
The rule of law. Listen to her. My God. Kamala Harris is better than so many goddamn people in America.
Okay.
She is better than so many people.
How do you vote for someone who says, if I win, it was a fair election? If I lose, Kamala Harris and her buddies fixed it. That's delusional. That you can't have that, and you can certainly not storm the Capitol when you're the sitting president of the United States.
In America, we call that a sore loser. And in this case, this is someone who has already lost, which would say that they are actually already a loser.
And how do you vote?
Damn. The right of free speech means that a man has the right to express his ideas without danger of suppression, interference, or punitive action by the government. It does not mean that others must provide him with a lecture hall, radio station, or a printing press through which to express his ideas. Any undertaking that involves more than one man requires the voluntary consent of every participant. Every one of them has the right to make his own decision, but none has the right to force his decision on others. There is no such thing as a right to a job. There is only the right of free trade, that is, a man's right to take a job if another man chooses to hire him. There is no right to a home, only the right of free trade, the right to build a home or to buy it. There are no rights to a fair wage or a fair price if no one chooses to pay it, to hire a man, or to buy his product. There are no rights of consumers to milk, shoes, movies, or champagne if no producers choose to manufacture such items. There's only the right to manufacture them oneself. There are no rights of special groups. There are no rights of farmers, of workers, of businessmen, of employees, of employers, of the old, of the young, of the unborn. These are only the rights of man, rights possessed by every individual man and by all men as individuals. Property rights and the right of free trade are man's only economic rights, and they are in fact political rights. There can be no such thing as an economic Bill of Rights. But observe that the advocates of the latter have all but destroyed the former. Remember that rights are moral principles which define and protect a man's freedom of action but impose no obligations on other men. Private citizens are not a threat to one another's rights or freedom. A private citizen who resorts to physical force and violates the rights of others is a criminal, and men have legal protection against him. Criminals are a small minority in any age or country, and the harm they have done to mankind is infinitesimal when compared to the horrors, the bloodshed, the wars, the persecutions, the confiscations, the famines, the enslavements, the whole destructions perpetuated by mankind's governments. Potentially, a government is the most dangerous threat to man's rights. It holds a legal monopoly on the use of physical force against legally disarmed victims. Well, la-di-da.